December 10th, 2004. Gary Webb writes a note to his family. The coroner calls it suicide, but Webb's friends know better. This was the reporter who proved the CIA helped flood America with crack cocaine. 8 years earlier, Webb published evidence that CIA-protected drug dealers taught Los Angeles how to cook crack, creating 1,000 new addicts every week. His sources: federal court transcripts, DEA reports, and the dealer's own confessions. Within days of publishing, Webb's phone clicks with wiretaps. Cars follow him home, and the Washington Post, New York Times, and LA Times assign 17 reporters to destroy him. Not to investigate the CIA, to destroy Webb. And here's what should terrify you. While Nancy Reagan told kids, "Just say no," the CIA was protecting traffickers who moved 5,000 kilos of cocaine annually into our neighborhoods. The war on drugs was a lie. Webb proved it. And then he died with 2 bullets in his head. Who really killed Gary Webb? How did one story destroy America's best investigative reporter? July 18th, 1995. Gary Webb stares at a half-eaten sandwich on his desk at the San Jose Mercury News. 6 rings into a call he almost didn't answer, Coral Baca's voice cracks through the receiver. The government is protecting the man who taught Los Angeles how to make crack. Webb sets down his sandwich. Baca isn't some conspiracy theorist. She's fighting to keep her boyfriend, Rafael Cornejo, from serving life in prison for cocaine trafficking. She claims Cornejo's supplier, Danilo Blandon, walks free despite moving 3,000 kilos of cocaine because he works for the DEA. And before that, Blandon worked for something else. The Contras, Baca whispers. He sold drugs for the Nicaraguan Contras, the CIA's army. In that exact moment, Webb's pen stops moving. In 1995, connecting the Contras to cocaine isn't new. Senator John Kerry documented it in 1989. But Kerry's 1,166-page report got buried in the Washington Post. No follow-up, no outrage, and no consequences. Now Baca claims she has proof. Federal grand jury transcripts where Blandon admits everything under oath. 7 days later, Webb meets her in San Francisco's federal courthouse. She slides him a manila folder with 98 pages of testimony, most covered in black redaction bars. But between the censored lines, names emerge: Danilo Blandon, Norwin Meneses, Freeway, Ricky Ross, and on page 73, clear as day, Blandon testifies, "I sold cocaine to help the Contras. The FBI and CIA knew about it." Webb's pulse jumps. He can feel it in his throat. This isn't hearsay. This is sworn testimony in federal court. Blandon sold cocaine by the ton, and his best customer, Ricky Ross, turned that powder into crack rocks that destroyed South Central LA. And Blandon did it, he says, with the knowledge and protection of U.S. intelligence. Webb drives back to San Jose with the documents on his passenger seat. Every red light, he glances at them. Ricky Ross. The name keeps appearing. Webb doesn't know it yet, but Ross isn't just any dealer. By 1995, the DEA credits him with spreading crack cocaine to every major American city. His network moved $600 million worth of cocaine. He literally created the template other dealers copied nationwide. And according to these documents, Ross's supplier was protected by the federal government. Webb walks into his editor's office the next morning. "I need 6 months and a travel budget." His editor, Dawn Garcia, reads the first page of transcripts, then the second, and by page 10, she looks up, "Take 8 months, take whatever you need." Because they both know, if even half of this is true, it's the biggest scandal since Watergate. Webb starts with a simple question: who is Danilo Blandon? The answer will take him from the killing fields of Nicaragua to the crack houses of Watts, from Miami trafficking routes to Washington committee rooms where the truth goes to die. And at every turn, he'll find the same pattern. Every time local cops got close to Blandon or his boss Meneses, federal agents intervened. Every time prosecutors built a case, it mysteriously fell apart. Somebody very powerful wanted these men free. The question is, how many Americans died so the CIA could fund its secret war? And can one reporter in San Jose really take on the agency that overthrew governments in Guatemala, Iran, and Chile. August 1995. Webb books a flight to Miami with one goal: find Oscar Danilo Blandon Reyes, the Nicaraguan cocaine trafficker who is supposedly in federal protection, testifying against his former clients while inexplicably avoiding prison himself. Webb discovers Blandon's history reads like a CIA operations manual. Son of a wealthy Managua family, came to America in 1979 when the Sandinistas took power, started selling cars in Los Angeles, and then in 1981, something changed. Blandon met Norwin Meneses at a Contra fundraiser in San Francisco. Meneses, already Nicaragua's biggest drug trafficker, with heroin and cocaine routes from Colombia to California, hatched a plan with Blandon. Sell cocaine to black dealers in LA, send profits to the Contras fighting in Nicaragua. Blandon literally testified that Contra leader Enrique Bermudez on the CIA payroll knew about the drug sales. Then Webb tracks down a retired DEA agent called Celerino Castillo. The third Castillo investigated Contra drug trafficking from 1985 to 1990. He says to Webb that every time they tried to arrest Meneses, they got a call from Washington to stand down because of national security. Castillo shows Webb his reports, detailed documentation of cocaine flights from El Salvador to the U.S., protected by the State Department, all filed and ignored. After that, Webb flies to Los Angeles and finds the story's missing piece in a concrete cage: Ricky Donnell Ross, serving life without parole in a federal prison. Ross doesn't look like the man who allegedly started the crack epidemic. He was illiterate until age 28 and had a tennis scholarship to Cal State LA until injury ended his dreams. Then started selling cocaine in 1979 to pay rent, and in 1981 his supplier introduced him to Blandon. Ross explains the economics that created crack. When powder cocaine costs $55,000 per kilo, only rich people buy it. At $12,000, middle-class dealers can afford it. But there's still a problem. Poor people can't pay $100 for a gram of powder. So Ross started cooking cocaine with baking soda, creating crack rocks. Same high, but now you could sell it for $5 a hit. He could take 1 kilo of powder and turn it into $75,000 in crack sales, while Danilo was bringing him 100 kilos a week. The math is staggering. 100 kilos weekly becomes 10,000 individual crack sales, becomes 50,000 addicts monthly, becomes the crack epidemic. And Blandon? Protected by the federal government the entire time. Webb finds LAPD detective Steve Polak, who investigated Blandon in 1986. They had everything to catch him: surveillance, wiretaps, informants, until one day his captain called and the investigations were over. When Polak asked why, the captain just said it was orders from Washington. Now things are turning black. Webb pieces together the timeline. From 1981 to 1986, Blandon and Meneses flood LA with cocaine. In 1986, Congress cuts off Contra funding so suddenly, the CIA needs the drug money more than ever. Then, in 1986 and 1987, Blandon's operation explodes, moving 5,000 kilos yearly. In 1988, the DEA finally arrests him, but instead of prison, Blandon cuts a deal. He becomes a federal informant. His sentence? Time served for 28 months. Meneses? Never arrested by U.S. authorities. And Ross? Life without parole. The black dealer gets life and the Nicaraguan suppliers walk free. Webb obtains Kerry's Senate investigation files, 30,000 pages the government fought to keep sealed. One document stops him cold. A 1983 U.S. Customs report noting that Norwin Meneses is trafficking cocaine to fund the Contras. The government knew in 1983, but the crack epidemic exploded in 1984. They let it happen. Another document, a 1986 FBI teletype warning that Danilo Blandon is supplying cocaine to the Bloods and Crips. The FBI knew crack was destroying Los Angeles. They knew who supplied it, but they did nothing. Webb has his story. But how do you tell America that its government chose funding a secret war over protecting its own citizens? How many bodies piled up while the CIA looked away? And what happens when Webb publishes this truth? Webb spends 4 months writing, 3 articles of 20,000 words. His editor, Dawn Garcia, assigns 2 fact-checkers. They verify every document, re-interview every source. The Mercury News lawyers review each sentence. Nobody finds a factual error. The series needs a title, so Webb suggests Dark Alliance, the relationship between drug dealers and intelligence agencies. The graphics department creates something unprecedented, an image showing a crack smoker superimposed over the CIA seal. No newspaper has ever accused the CIA so directly. On August 18, 1996, the Mercury News publishes online first, still unusual in 1996. Within hours, the website crashes. The paper's tech team has never seen traffic like this. 1.3 million hits daily, when 50,000 was considered huge. The print edition hits stands August 19th. By noon, it's sold out across Northern California. Black talk radio explodes. KJLH in Los Angeles reads entire sections on air. Cliff Kelly in Chicago demands congressional action. Joe Madison in Washington, D.C. tells listeners, "This is genocide, and now we have proof." In South Central L.A., Congresswoman Maxine Waters holds the newspaper aloft at a community meeting. "While our children died, while our communities burned, the CIA protected the killers." 2,000 people roar approval. The crowd marches to the federal building, while CIA Director John Deutsch scrambles. He's never faced this kind of public fury. Black Americans aren't buying the denials anymore, not after COINTELPRO, after Tuskegee, after decades of provable government lies. Deutsch makes an unprecedented decision. He'll hold a town hall in South Central LA, November 15, 1996. Deutsch arrives at Locke High School in Watts expecting maybe 100 people, but he finds 1,700. The auditorium erupts when he enters, not applause, but anger. "How many more of our children have to die?" One mother screams. "You killed my baby!" Another shouts. "The CIA is the real drug cartel." Deutsch tries to speak. The crowd drowns him out. "Liar! Liar! Liar!" For 3 hours, Deutsch stands there, sweating under television lights, as person after person describes how crack destroyed their family. He keeps repeating, "We didn't do this. We don't deal drugs." But nobody believes him. One Vietnam veteran approaches the microphone. "I fought for this country. My son died from crack cocaine. Now I learn my own government brought in the poison. How do you live with yourself?" Deutsch has no answer. The scene plays on every network. For the first time in its history, the CIA faces a genuine public relations crisis. Webb watches from his hotel room, feeling something between vindication and dread. He's forced the CIA director to answer to the people of Watts, but he also knows how the agency handles threats. 3 days later, Webb's phone rings. "You're going to regret this," the voice says. Then the line goes dead. He tells his editor. She suggests he stay in a hotel for a few nights, but Webb refuses. He has 3 kids at home. And then it starts. He starts noticing things, cars parked outside his house that weren't there before. Clicks on his phone line, his computer's at work crashing mysteriously. It's paranoia? Maybe. But when you've accused the CIA of enabling drug trafficking, paranoia might just be pattern recognition. Then comes the counterattack. Not from the CIA directly, they're too smart for that. Instead, the attack comes from an unexpected direction, America's most prestigious newspapers. The Los Angeles Times assigns 17 reporters to one story, destroying Gary Webb. The Washington Post puts their national security team on it. The New York Times unleashes their top investigative unit. Webb assumes they're going to investigate his findings further. Instead, they investigate him. The question isn't what the CIA did. It's whether Gary Webb is a credible reporter, and the establishment has decided he's not. But why would America's top newspapers protect the CIA? And what happens when every major media outlet turns against one reporter? October 1996. Los Angeles Times editor Shelby Coffey III calls a meeting, and 17 reporters receive the same assignment: discredit Dark Alliance. Not investigate whether the CIA enabled drug trafficking. That question is off the table. Instead, find any error, any overstatement, any weakness in Webb's reporting, and they find three. First, Webb can't prove the CIA deliberately targeted black communities with crack. True, Webb never claimed they did. He reported willful negligence, not active targeting. But the LA Times frames this as Webb's central claim, then triumphantly debunks it. Second, Webb can't prove exactly how many millions went to the Contras. Could be $1 million, could be $10 million. But Webb reported millions based on Ross's sales figures. The LA Times declares this unproven, ignoring that any amount of drug money funding the Contras is the scandal. Third, Webb can't prove Blandon's cocaine caused the crack epidemic single-handedly. Of course not. No single dealer caused a nationwide epidemic. But the LA Times uses this to suggest Webb claimed Blandon alone created crack, which Webb never wrote. Done this, on October 20th, 1996, the LA Times publishes a 3-day, 20,000-word series not investigating the CIA, investigating Webb. They interview anonymous sources who call Webb reckless. They quote experts saying black communities are prone to conspiracy theories. They even publish a bizarre sidebar psychoanalyzing why African Americans don't trust the government, as if centuries of documented persecution aren't reason enough. The Washington Post follows on October 4th. Their piece, by Walter Pincus, who later admits he worked with the CIA in the 1960s, doesn't challenge Webb's facts. Instead, it nitpicks his presentation. The headline used the word sparked instead of contributed to. The graphic was inflammatory. The website was sensationalist. The New York Times piles on, suggesting Webb is a conspiracy theorist, comparing him to people who think the moon landing was faked. They interview 0 crack victims, 0 South Central residents, 0 Contra drug traffickers. They interview 6 CIA sources, all anonymous, all denying everything. Here's what none of these papers report. In 1988, their own newspapers published tiny articles mentioning Contra drug trafficking. They buried the stories and never followed up. Now, when Webb does follow up, they attack him for it. The Mercury News editor Jerry Kepos starts buckling. His country club friends mock him. His peers at journalism conferences shun him. The Washington Post editorial board calls him personally, suggesting he retract on May 11, 1997. Kepos publishes a column that doesn't retract Webb's facts, but apologizes for presentation and implications. He writes that Dark Alliance fell short of standards, without explaining which standards or how the national media treats this as complete vindication. Webb's own paper admits he was wrong, the headlines scream. Except Kepos never says Webb was wrong about facts. He says the presentation was imperfect. But that distinction disappears in the media feeding frenzy. Webb watches his life's work twisted into something unrecognizable. Journalists who never read his series cite the LA Times critique as gospel. His Wikipedia page brands him discredited. At journalism conferences, his name becomes a cautionary tale about what happens when reporters overreach. The Mercury News transfers Webb to a bureau in Cupertino, 150 miles from his home. His new beat? Daily car crashes and weather reports. They assign him to cover a police horse's death from constipation, a deliberate humiliation. Webb understands the message: quit or be buried in mundane assignments forever. And he quits. In December 1997, Gary Webb cleans out his desk. 20 years of investigative reporting over. His marriage straining, his reputation destroyed, his income gone. All for reporting something that was true. Because here's what his critics never address. Everything Webb reported was accurate. Blandon did sell cocaine for the Contras. The CIA did protect him. Ross did spread crack across America using Blandon's supply. The government did know. Those facts remain unchallenged. But facts don't matter when the entire media establishment decides you're the enemy. Webb learns what every whistleblower learns. The system doesn't attack your message. It attacks you. And once they've destroyed the messenger, the message dies with him. Or does it? What happens when official investigations quietly confirm everything Webb reported after they've already destroyed him? March 16, 1998. CIA Inspector General Frederick Hitz sits before Congress with a 400-page classified report. What he's about to say should resurrect Gary Webb's reputation. Instead, it will pass almost unnoticed. In the 1980s, Hitz testifies, CIA officials knew Contra members were trafficking cocaine. We did not report these individuals to law enforcement. We continued to work with them. Congressman Norman Dix asks the obvious question. So Gary Webb was right? Hitz pauses. There were instances where Mr. Webb's reporting was on target. The admission should be front-page news. The CIA's own Inspector General confirming they protected drug dealers. Instead, the Washington Post buries it. The New York Times runs 400 words on a random page, and the LA Times ignores it for 2 months. No headlines, no apologies to Webb, no follow-ups. Then, the Monica Lewinsky scandal dominates the news cycle, and CIA drug trafficking becomes yesterday's story. Webb reads Hitz's report at his apartment, now empty since his wife moved out. One page confirms Blandon was protected. Another admits the CIA worked with 50 different Contra-related drug traffickers, and one later reveals the Justice Department gave the CIA written permission to avoid reporting drug crimes by assets. Everything Webb reported, validated, but nobody cares. He writes a book expanding Dark Alliance with 200 pages of documentation, but publishers reject it as too controversial. When a small press finally publishes it, major newspapers refuse to review it. Bookstores hide it in back sections. The book sells 30,000 copies, respectable for a small press, invisible compared to what it deserved. Webb takes a job with the California State Legislature investigating government corruption. The irony isn't lost on him. The reporter who exposed CIA corruption now works for $50,000 a year examining small-time fraud. His colleagues respect him, but everyone knows he's damaged goods. No major newspaper will hire him. His applications vanish into silence. Publicly, nobody defends him, because supporting Gary Webb is career suicide. By 2003, Webb's depression deepens. His eldest son finds him crying in his car outside their old house, now in foreclosure. "I used to matter," Webb tells him. "I used to make a difference." His ex-wife, Susan Bell, later reveals he'd call at 3 a.m., unable to sleep, reciting the names of every editor who betrayed him. October 1999. The Department of Justice releases its own report, 385 pages confirming CIA officers knew about Contra drug trafficking but did nothing. One page specifically validates Webb's reporting about Blandon and menaces. Major newspapers run nothing. Webb laughs bitterly when a friend shows him. In 2004, Webb sells his motorcycle to pay rent. He's behind on child support. His credit card's maxed. The Pulitzer Prize winner who exposed the biggest scandal of the 1980s can't afford groceries. On December 10, 2004 at 2 a.m., Gary Webb shoots himself in the head. The bullet passes through his cheek, and in agony, he fires again. This time, it's fatal. The coroner finds him hours later. He was 49 years old. Major newspapers run brief obituaries calling him the discredited reporter who wrote Dark Alliance. They dedicate more words to dismissing his work than acknowledging his death. But online, in forums and alternative websites, thousands mourn. Gary Webb was right. The documents proved it. The government admitted it. The crack epidemic had accomplices in Washington. One reporter had the courage to report it, and the establishment made sure he'd be the last. 2 bullets to the head, ruled a suicide. Sound familiar? Because a few years after Webb died, another man who knew too much about government corruption would die in a Spanish prison cell. John McAfee spent years exposing CIA operations, government surveillance, and the deep state's darkest secrets. Then, like Webb, he supposedly killed himself, despite tweeting days earlier, "If I suicide myself, I didn't." Click here to discover how the man who created antivirus software became the government's most wanted enemy.